Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I am going to do a presentation on a news article that I found today on India, particularly India, but it actually has a little bit to do with Afghanistan, and we'll get into that. So I apologize for not being able to make it to class this week. I have another obligation that I was held to do this week and next week. So I'll present online. I hope you find this satisfactory. So the presentation, I guess, is the future of Afghan air traffic control, and we're dealing not with the blanket, but with the country of Afghanistan. So let's get into it here. So here's a little bit of the background. Afghanistan, as you know, is kind of a hotbed for military action in the Middle East. And air traffic control has actually been controlled by the U.S. military because obviously they've got a lot of stuff going on in Afghanistan. So they've had a lot of background with almost everything to do in Afghanistan. They're really building up a lot. So the agreement that the U.S. military has is going to end in June 2015. So right, in just a few weeks. India, which is a neighbor to Afghanistan, along with a handful of other countries, I believe it said six other countries, they've expressed interest. They are willing to look into taking up the contract or providing that service for Afghanistan. So we will see what happens, but naturally the timeline on this is pretty short because, again, like I said, it is expiring the end of June 2015. So why is this a big deal? All flights, or nearly all, I should say, all flights connecting India to Europe traverse Afghan airspace. That's about 300 flights a day. That's overflights and arrivals into Afghanistan. So we'll get into some graphics here and kind of talk about this. This map is just off of FlightAware, but I've shown here that this area here, whoops, let me back up. This is a Kabul International Airport, and that's just a simple search on FlightAware. But you can tell the country here of Afghanistan is kind of the shape of West Virginia, but it's actually about the size of Texas. So that kind of gives you a size, a scale for size. And this, this was, a random time. You can kind of see how many aircraft are actually in Afghanistan, in their airspace. So this is the international airport, Kabul. That's the capital of Afghanistan. So here's a departure from New Delhi and en route to Istanbul, Turkey. So we'll kind of see, oops, I thought I had an action there, but yeah. Every time they overfly and go through Afghanistan airspace, Afghans have the opportunity to charge for that overflight, as we've read in previous chapters, as other countries do. So it's very convenient, obviously, because it's a pretty short route when you go direct like that. So we would like to try to keep that if we could. This obviously is not efficient, and this is kind of this is what they're worried about. If the U.S. stops controlling traffic and the airspace is handed back over to Afghanistan, they don't really have the means to control the traffic right now. So in the article they say that they would have to go up and around, up into Central Asia and then around over to Europe, and this example ends in Turkey and Istanbul. So not the most convenient or efficient. Obviously, it's going to add time, burn more fuel, cause more delays. It's just not good for anybody. So this is really a big deal. Prior to the U.S. military takeover in 2001, kind of when military or the United States really took over everything in Afghanistan, air traffic control and airports had both been run by the Taliban, which is terrifying. I mean, think about that for a little bit. Each flight that overflies Afghanistan So if we go back to this example here, this flight has potential based on, I'm sure they've got their own different formula, but it could harbor or garner up to $500, which for traveling by and not even going there, that's a pretty big deal. So this is a big deal for Afghanistan. 300 flights a day, overflights and en routes is not, that's nothing. I mean, Grand Forks Tower does 2,000 in a day, 2,000 operations in a day. So I mean, it's 300 is very, very small, especially when you're thinking about the size of Texas. So you think about how many airplanes fly in and around Texas. It's not a lot, but for those standards, it is. So India, they do have some experience here, and they do have some expansive territories. This is the best map that I could find, but here's the shape of India, and then also their flight information regions, their FIRs. So they deal with everything, obviously, in India, but then they also deal with a lot of airspace out in the Indian Ocean. The article that I found was actually from an Indian Times newspaper, so they were pretty quick to say, oh yeah, they're one of the best in Southeast Asia. Well, who can deny that? They are very large and they do cover a lot of area. So, and they happen to be very close neighbors. I believe this is Pakistan, and then Afghanistan is right over here. So I mean, it would make sense. Why not? India has a lot invested in this as well too. Just like the FAA and the U.S. government is investing a lot in next gen, India has developed their own SBAS, their satellite-based augmentation system. It's kind of like WAAS, what we have in the U.S., the Wide Area Augmentation System, and EGNOS, not the Christmas drink, but the EGNOS, the European Geostationary Navigation Overlay Service. They call theirs GAGN. I believe, I've never heard it pronounced, so I apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But that's short for GPS-aided geo-augmented navigation. So it's actually pretty cool. They can do things a lot like we do with WAAS, or the Europeans do with the EGNOS. So they definitely have a lot of experience in controlling traffic and the ability to do it pretty well, especially with their new systems that they have in place. So that's pretty neat. On another note, kind of presenting for my final project, here's kind of the idea that I presented in my journal, but I'll just kind of let you guys know what I'm thinking. I really kind of struggled with this for a few weeks, not quite sure what I wanted to do, but I guess just the events of the past few days and discussions that we've had in class, and particularly with Canada, I thought that it would be kind of fun fun, I shouldn't really say fun, but I thought it'd be interesting, I should say, to figure out how user fees would affect the cost of flight training at UND Aerospace. That's kind of very particular, but obviously user fees are going to affect the cost of flight in all aspects, but my project, I think, will just be according to UND Aerospace. I am planning to use a formula similar or even the one that they use in Canada, even though it might not be what we use here in the U.S. if it were ever to come, but something similar just to kind of give an idea. Obviously, there could be a million different variables and things could change a lot, but it's kind of a baseline. That's somewhere to start. I want to kind of compile numbers and do my best to estimate based on UND flight operations for the fiscal year ending June 30th of this year, so fiscal year 15. This is extremely timely, as if anybody's watched the news this week, Tuesday, the 16th, there was a proposed by a Pennsylvania representative, Bill Schuster. I'm sure everyone's going to be pretty familiar with that name coming up in the next little while, but Representative Bill Schuster from Pennsylvania he wants, or he's laying the groundwork, I guess, to figure out how we can privatize. And privatize, I think, has a very negative connotation, but he wants to take it away from the U.S. government because the government obviously is not the most efficient at doling out money or upgrading or anything, really. I mean, if you look at the size of government programs, there's a lot of waste that can be cut, and I think we all see that, even if we work for the FAA or not. I mean, I think everybody has an idea that that happens. If you follow the news recently, this makes sense. I should back up. NATCA, actually, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, is actually behind it. They are surprisingly, they've been very supportive of this presentation. So I haven't gotten a lot of details yet, but I'm very interested to see how this will play out. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about privatization and how it's good, but it's bad. We look at Lockheed Martin, and when they privatized flight service, some people say, well, it's very bad. Some people say, well, it's very good. We look at the pay for those flight service briefers; it's gone up a lot. We look at the services provided, and I guess from a pilot aspect, I don't notice any difference, to be honest. I don't call flight service every day, but I do use the service, especially the website. I'll call if I have questions or if I want to answer a specific answer, but they're very helpful. So I think that going in with a kind of a clean conscience without being negatively connotated, taking a look at all of the information, privatization of air traffic control could be a good thing, and I think that's what NATCA is looking at when they're supporting this as well. It's not always take, but I think if you give the organization, whatever air traffic organization is willing to do the job, if you give them the required materials and let them run it like a business instead of like a government agency, I think that's very, it could be very, very good. Also, I guess just at UND Aerospace, we are a school, but also a business. And that's why we have the UND Aerospace Foundation, because we can't run at the speed of a school and run through all the red tape. That's why most of our aircraft are owned by the UND Aerospace Foundation, because we need to have that flexibility. So I think if we cut some of the government strings and everybody's hand is in the pot, I think if you restrict all of that, it has potential to be very, very good. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think, and I hopefully will be able to kind of crunch some numbers here to determine what user fees are going to cost UND Aerospace. A lot of questions to be answered, but we'll see what happens. So, thanks guys for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can shoot me an email or send me a message on EZ. Either way, but I'd be happy to discuss more. So, thanks a lot, guys.